I've been camping most of my life. Not the kind with cabins or lights nearby, but the kind where the roads disappear behind you and the forest takes over. The kind where nights are usually calm, predictable, and quiet in a way that helps you sleep. Most trips fade from memory, but every now and then there's one that doesn't. This is one of those. It happened when I was in my early 20s. A few friends and I decided to spend the weekend camping in a wooded area, several miles away from the nearest road. Nothing extreme, just tents, food, and a place far enough away to feel disconnected. We arrived in the afternoon, set up camp, built a fire, and settled in. Everything felt normal. The forest sounded alive, birds, wind in the trees, the steady crackle of the fire as the sun went down. There was no sense that anything was wrong. By late evening, we put out most of the fire and went to sleep. Before closing my tent, I remember noticing how dark the woods looked beyond the remaining embers. Not empty, just deep, like the darkness had weight to it. I didn't dwell on it and tried to sleep. Sometime during the night, I woke up though. There was no noise that triggered it, no obvious reason, just that sudden awareness that pulls you out of sleep. The first thing I noticed was how quiet everything was. No insects, no wind. The kind of silence that feels unnatural once you realize it's there. And then I heard movement. Footsteps, slow and controlled. Not the quick, uneven sounds of an animal, but the steady rhythm of someone walking carefully. At first my mind tried to explain it away. An animal passing through, someone from another campsite maybe. But the steps were too deliberate. They moved around the edge of our campsite, not rushing, not stumbling, stopping and starting again, even circling. I stayed completely still inside my tent, as if I'd frozen on point, listening. The footsteps came closer, and then moved away, and then they returned again. Each time they paused, it felt intentional, as if whoever was out there was paying attention. The sound of movement eventually reached a space just outside my tent. It stopped there, close enough that I could hear the ground compress under weight. Someone was standing right outside. My heart was pounding, but I didn't move. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't unzip the tent. I just waited. Minutes passed. The silence stretched. Then the footsteps moved again. Slowly, continuing their path around the campsite. At some point they headed toward the trees. There was no sound of retreat, no branches snapping, no leaves shifting, just a sudden absence of sound altogether. I couldn't sleep after that. I lay awake until the sky began to lighten, listening for any sign of movement. When morning came, I stepped out of the tent and saw that everyone else looked just as exhausted. No one needed to explain anything. We all knew. We checked the campsite before packing up. There were footprints in the dirt, clear ones, boot prints. They circled the fire pit, passed by each tent, and then stopped. There were no tracks leading back into the woods, no clear direction of departure, just impressions on the ground, ending abruptly near the tree line. We packed up quickly and left. No breakfast, no lingering. The entire hike back to the car felt longer than it should have. Every sound behind us felt louder than it needed to be. Years later, I mentioned the experience to someone who worked outdoors for a living, someone who had spent decades around campsites and trails. They weren't surprised. Apparently, stories like that are more common than people realize. Not animals, not ghosts, just like people who move through campsites at night without being noticed, watching and leaving before daylight. I still sit by fires like this, but I do things differently now. I keep the fire burning longer than necessary. I stay within the light. And if I ever wake up in the middle of the night and I hear movement beyond the glow of the fire, I don't try to identify it. I don't call out. I don't make noise. I stay still and I wait for morning. Because whatever was out there that night, it knew exactly where we were, and it never wanted to be seen.